They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and most inventions came about because someone wanted to do something and they realized the tool didn't exist, so they built it. The issue I had is that me and my friends planned a ride around a county park, and we wanted to use my Mavic 2 drone to film the ride. Unfortunately, active track is not very reliable on DJI drones, and the drone will often lose its subject. At the time of the making of this video, the only drone that I know of that would probably do a better job is a Skydio 2. But based on some of the videos that I've seen from other YouTubers, unless the subject is carrying the Skydio 2's beacon, it's not as reliable as one would like. And even though using the beacon is much more reliable, there's still a problem. You see, when you ask the drone to automatically track you, the drone is going to calculate the best path to fly in order to avoid obstacles. But the best path to fly might not give you the best cinematic effect. To solve that problem, I decided to use waypoints. Now, before creating and using waypoints, there are some features that you will need to turn on. Also, before you fly, study your terrain and know what obstacles you need to be looking out for. This will require visiting the site and choosing a takeoff location. Your launch point will be 0 AGL, and all vertical distances will be calculated based on your launch point. This is especially important when flying in mountainous terrain, but let's leave the mountainous terrain for later. The most important thing you gain from using waypoints is the ability to create your own cinematic shots. Here are 2 examples from the bike ride we did on Thanksgiving Day. With active track, there is no way I could have gotten those shots, because it's the drone that would have been deciding the flight path, altitude, and camera angle. So by using waypoints, you can really get creative by deciding the height that the drone should be above the subject, the distance of the subject, the speed, and the direction in which you want to point the camera. So let's create a test flight using waypoints. Okay, so here we are I'm actually at my desk right now, but I was just doing a pre-flight configuration. So the thing with the DJI app is that if you want to create a flight plan using waypoints, the drone needs to be on. And another drawback that I don't like about the DJI app is that if you save a flight using waypoints, there's no way to send it to another device. So obviously when I'm riding my bike in a park, I'm going to be using my cell phone because it's not practical to have your tablet sitting on your handlebar. So I have to use my cell phone. But unfortunately, currently at the time that I'm making this video, November 2021, DJI doesn't have a way to have you send that flight plan that you've created to another device. So when I did the ride with my friends and family on Thanksgiving Day, basically I had to do the entire flight, create the flight on my phone. But that's fine. For the sake of this video, I'm going to do it on my tablet. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come to this icon, which brings up the flight modes, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit waypoints over here. It says task recovery. So apparently the task, I think it's some glitch with the software because I did save the flight plan. So let's cancel that. And normally what you would do, you'd go up here to these 3 little dots, you'd hit that. And let's configure route settings. So my route, polyline, that's fine. When the task is finished, let's change that to landing. You can have it return to home, hover, return to first waypoint. I'd like to land in this case. I'd like to do something new. What happens if the remote controller is not detected by the drone, if it loses connection with the remote controller? That might happen, but it might be a temporary thing as it, travels to the different locations on the map. So I would just say continue task, because eventually it's going to come back within range. And then the cruise speed, we want to set that to 10 miles an hour, more or less. Yep. So close that, bring that again, route settings, landing, continue task, 10 miles an hour, good. So we close that. And then we want to make sure of certain settings for the drone. So let's press the drone icon there. Wait, okay, we're in intelligent flight mode. So let's exit that, go back to normal, and let's hit that drone icon. And I like to set it, the home point settings, I want to have it coming back to me. Of course, the GPS isn't working right now, so let's leave that until we get on site to actually do our flight. And return to home altitude. So you have to bear in mind where you're going to fly, and you will set the return to home altitude based on that. Bear in mind that the drone will always use the start point as the reference point for measuring the height. So if you're flying in a mountainous area, then you might want to set that return to home altitude higher, that way you don't run into any problems. Maximum flight altitude, that's something you want to modify also, especially if you're in a mountainous area, because if you keep climbing, it might exceed this 120 meters or 400 feet default limit, and you don't want to have that causing any problems. So you would adjust that based on how high you're going to fly. Then we come to the section about visual obstacle avoidance. You definitely want to turn that on because since you'll be traveling over an area and you might get certain things configured wrong. I know when I did our bike ride, I did send up the drone and I checked the height of some of the tallest trees, and I was off by probably about 5 feet, but only very few trees were that tall. So fortunately, the obstacle avoidance was able to detect that, and I was able to get out of trouble. So we want to come back now to our intelligent flight modes, and we want to go waypoints, and we press these 3 dots, and we're task library. So here's my flight that I created, Oki test. So let's go ahead and load that. And here you can see all the waypoints I've programmed in blue, along with the point of interest that are in red. Now, by default, whenever you're creating a waypoint, and you can see I created a waypoint here by accident. So the waypoint was supposed to be just, the last one was supposed to be 11. But because waypoints are highlighted right now, whenever I touch a screen, it automatically creates a waypoint. So I don't want that. So I touch this, I delete, touch this, I delete. So in my first waypoint, and let's touch this to see what it has, it's set to 100 feet. So once a drone launches and I activate, this flight is going to go to 100 feet in this exact position, and then it's going to start recording, and then it's going to start traveling. As you can see here, I've set the cruise speed. The speed is actually the cruising speed that I've set for the entire flight. And the action is to start recording. The gimbal pitch, 45 degrees. So the camera is going to be pointed 45 degrees downwards. So because I'm in the this actual waypoint, number 1, whenever I move my stylus up and down the screen, the height is going to change. So you have to be careful of stuff like that. And so I'm going to put it back to 100 feet. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to exit the edit mode for that waypoint. At the second waypoint, let's touch that. I've set the height to 80 feet. Let's hit OK, and let's zoom in first. So I have the drone coming offshore a little bit, and I've set the height to 80 feet, so it's going to descend 20 feet from the starting point, and the cruising speed, that was the overall speed for the entire flight. But now for the POI, I have it pointed to point of interest number 1, which is, right here on the path, and it's at 0 feet. If you put it at 20 feet, then the camera is going to focus at a spot 20 feet above the path. But we don't want that. We want the image properly framed, and the rider is passing through the center of the screen. So we have a point of interest number 1 at 0 feet, and that's where the camera is going to point. For point of interest number 3, I have the drone quickly descending to 15 feet, and it's still pointed at point of interest number 1. And of course, because the riders are going to be traveling along, as I have it moving from waypoint number 3 to waypoint number 4. Oh, there we go again. Notice that. I accidentally changed the height because I hadn't left the editing mode for that waypoint. As I come to waypoint number 4, the height, I've pushed it up to 30 feet. And same cruising speed, and I still have it pointed at point of interest number 1. Now, because the drone is moving, the angle is changing. So as the riders ride along, they're still within frame. Not necessarily centered, but they are still within frame. And that gives you a nice cinematic shot. So what's going to happen now is I have a flight path configured. Oh, here we go again. Accidentally creating, accidentally created some waypoints. So let's delete that. Have to be very careful. If you touch the screen when you have one of these activated, then it will create a waypoint that you don't want. So at this waypoint number 7, I have the drone going up to 80 feet because I know the trees get relatively tall here. And while it's doing that, it's locked onto point of interest number 3. Then I have it descending over the water to 20 feet. And then at this waypoint number 8, notice I've pushed the speed up to 17.9 miles per hour. So at this point, the drone is going to zip across the water down to waypoint number 9. And with the same speed, it's going to go to waypoint number 10. And then with the same speed, it's going to come. But at this point, it's at 20 feet. And at waypoint number 11, which is where it's going to end, it's going to climb to 60 feet. But what's going to happen at waypoint number 11? If we hit that, you see the camera action, none. So the camera is still going to be recording, but what's going to happen at the end of the flight? Route settings. When the task is finished, it's going to land. So once it gets to waypoint number 11, it's going to land right there. And I know exactly what's there, which is why I chose that position for it to end. And it's going to land exactly where I'm sitting. So now that we have the flight already programmed, let's head to the park. Okay, so here we are. We're at the park, ready to fly. So let's start up. Let's go up to 100 feet. Which is the altitude we're going to be starting from. Okay, so we're going to go into our flight modes, waypoints. Let's change the route settings, cruising speed. Since this is a test, let's just increase the cruising speed to 15 miles an hour. That way we can get this done as quickly as possible. But as we discussed earlier, the cruising speed is always going to depend on what you calculate. And it might be different for different phases of the flight. So we can always change that when we set up the waypoints. So we close that, we load that, and then we go. Task check, da 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 da, start. So it's at the starting point. Okay, so my tablet rebooted. Not sure why. Let's wait for that to reboot. Did the app crash? So it's reconnected. So it's really going through those waypoints really fast, because 15 miles an hour is, you know, it's fast. So if we go back to the map, right, see that it's going across the water. Right. So it's supposed to be climbing over the trees right now. Obstacle avoidance is on. So even if it got near to a tree, then we would expect it to stop and find its way. Now, in my earlier video where I did that flight with the group of us riding the bikes, I actually paused it right there. And the reason why I paused it is that we hadn't come around this corner just yet. So I paused the drone and had it wait for us, and then I hit go to get it started again. So it's always good to, when you're programming the waypoints, stick with the average speed or the calculated speed that you think your bike riders or whoever will be traveling at. And it's always, even if you get it wrong and you go slightly faster, it's always better to go slightly faster than slightly slower, because if you're going slightly faster, you can always pause and wait for them to catch up. But you know, if they're going faster, then, you know, I know of no method to accelerate what the drone is doing. So let's hit go, continue. So here we can see it coming down here. We can see the image, we can see exactly what's happening. Okay, so for some reason or the other, it stopped. I don't know what it detected. Sometimes it's the reflection on the water. Let me see if I can close that shutter a bit. Not the shutter, the aperture of the camera, just in case it's too bright. And that's one of the good things, especially for those pilots who are Part 107. If you're doing a flight, there we go, my app crashed again. What's happening? I know this never usually happens on my iPad, but I know I just updated the DJI software recently. Well, actually I updated the firmware, not the software. So I'm not sure why it keeps crashing. Let's open the app again and let's see what happens. but still running. So that's a good thing about using the programming waypoints, because if your tablet crashes for whatever reason, it loses connection, the drone already has the waypoints programmed in, so it will keep running on its own, and that's a good thing. So basically the task is coming to an end right now. So we see the drone coming back right here, and then based on what I programmed, it should get to the point I programmed, and then it should land. It should land exactly in that spot. So based on my knowledge of the park, I knew it would land exactly right here. So that spot is not exactly dead on. So let me slide that to do the final landing procedure. So I was saying the spot was not ideal for landing, but that's fine. I was able to override that and land. And that's it. As easy as that.